I used to do nothing but watch old Bassmasters. I still do that. But I feel like back in the day, that's how guys won a lot of times, actually, was going all in on a technique. You know, like they picked up nothing but a jig and flipped a jig, and they were going to get 3 to 6 bites on it a day. But nowadays, I don't know if it's fishing pressure, and maybe you can talk about this, Kyle, but it just seems like you have to have an open mind. Like, even if you get on something, whether it's a pattern or not, you have to have that open mind to do something maybe a little bit different during the day that's going to get you those couple extra bites. I mean, do you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. It actually blows my mind that some guys can still do that a little bit, because I almost never, like, besides smallmouth, I can't remember a single time. I mean, except for Okeechobee this year, I definitely day one weighed in all 500% on a frog, and day two all 100% on a frog. But like, I almost never weigh in all my fish on the same bait. Like, almost never. Like, no matter what. So, I mean, I don't know how anybody has ever done it. Like, but I grew up in Alabama, being kind of a junk fisherman. To me, that was just never in the cards. And maybe that is because Alabama is a very pressured area, and it was kind of one of the first places where junk fishing came about, because it's one of the most pressured places in America to fish tournaments. So I think I just kind of grew up with that kind of being part of the past. Like, but I remember it exactly like you remember it. Like, they would just lock in one small little zone and just flip around in a circle and keep catching them. And it's like, now, if you get 2 bites in a day on one bait, I feel like you got kind of lucky.
Yeah. And so you mentioned junk fishing in Alabama. Take us through, like, what's your definition of junk fishing?
Yeah.
Because I think it could vary, with how different people fish, but what are your thoughts on that?
So a lot of times, to me, I hear people talk about junk fishing and it being like 20 rods on the front deck. And when I think about junk fishing, it's not really that. It's more like you've got 6 or 7 confidence baits that is like those are the ones when it gets tough, you got 6 rods laying on the front deck, it's those 6. But to me, it's like I'll catch 1 under a dock, 1 cranking riprap, 1 off a laydown, one that came up schooling in the middle of a pocket. Like, it's like taking those 6 rods from one end of the lake to the other and fishing like 12 different types of cover in 3 different depth zones and 4 different watercolors, because we have that on the lakes, and that's kind of, it's a bunch of junk that I'm throwing at. It's not a bunch of different junk that I'm throwing. Like, that's kind of the way that I think about junk fishing is I hit a bunch of different junk in a day, but I only use the same, if I'm going straight junk fishing, I'm going to have 7 or 8 rods on the deck, period. Like, not more than that. But then I'm going to fish everything on the lake.
Yeah. So it's more of, it's not what you're using, it's what you're using.
What you're throwing at.
What you're throwing at.
Yeah.
What you're using to throw it. I'll get it.
Yep.
It's the junk you're throwing at, as he put it.
Yeah. You find the best junk in that lake.
Or just find all the junk.
Yeah. But it does, I mean, it goes back to that, finding that perfect lay down with the perfect hyacinth mat on it, and, doing what you do best with your flip stick, frog, square bill, whatever. Finding the very best piece of riprap.
Yeah.
And knowing that you're going to go there, catch that fish, and then go flip a cypress tree 3 miles down the lake.
Yeah. This video is brought to you by the Deep Dive app. This is an app that you can download on your phone that helps you define bass on your local bodies of water a lot quicker. Once you download this app, you can actually select the lake that you are fishing, and then you can input data like water temperature, water clarity, whether you are fishing around vegetation, or if you are fishing in a windy or protected area. Once you input all this information, the app will actually spit out lures, techniques, and areas that you can go on your local body of water to catch bass. This app is backed by hundreds of different tournament results from across the nation and can be extremely accurate. So if you guys would like to help support the Bass Fishing HQ channel and allow me to bring more videos like this to you, hit that link down below and download the Deep Dive app today. With junk fishing, the hardest part of it, because we tend to do it a lot here. I mean, Ohio is not great by any means when it comes to fish populations, But to me, the hard thing, and I'd love to just know your thoughts too, Kyle, on this, is like when you do get a couple of bites, is like not getting locked into it, not getting locked into that bite. Like you said, you might catch one under a dock here and then a riprap. A lot of us fishermen, when we get that bite, sometimes we think, oh, let's go look for every single dock on the lake, or let's go look for every riprap stretch on the lake. So it's almost like you have to realize like that's you're just going to be junking. So like not getting locked in, like, do you just feel like that's also a big part of the junk fishing process, is once you get that bite to not just sit there and try to constantly duplicate it?
Oh yeah, like it 100% is. Like he was talking about having like the best piece of riprap, and that's true. Like there'll be one place in the riprap where like there's like one little outcropping, and like I'm not going to fish all the way down the riprap and it takes me 11 minutes. I'm going to pull up and I'm going to throw 4 casts at this one little corner, and it takes me, 90 seconds, to make all the casts, and I go somewhere else. And then like the way that I judge it is, if the fish came from where he was supposed to come from, I don't feel like it's really like, it's like if I'm fishing a row of docks and there's like 5 floating docks and 1 pole dock that's in 4 feet of water on the, that's in like the right spot, and I fish all those floating docks and don't catch anything, and I catch one under the pole dock, like I'm not going to automatically think that's a pattern. Like I'm going to think like, obviously the fish that's in this area wants to be on that dock because it's got, way more cover than all the rest of them around. Mm-hmm. But if I fish down that same stretch and I skip under a floating dock and I'm reeling it in and one eats it, and I've caught 3 or 4 random ones down the stretch, like around the docks, like random ones around the docks, I'm going to think it's a pattern and they're just on docks. But if they come from but if it's the best piece of cover in that area, I don't think it was as much as the dock was the best thing that he had. And when you get to a different area of the lake, it may not be that a dock's the best cover anymore. Like you're trying to fish the best cover in every section that you're in. And it's not really that, it's not that it's what it is, it's that it's better than everything else. It's kind of my thought process. So if he comes from like the place where he's obviously supposed to be, I'm not going to think it's a pattern as much as it's like the best place around.
That's good stuff. That's really good stuff. And I think that as we just continue to be fishermen, like all these lakes see so much pressure, I feel like the junk fisherman tends to do better overall, if that makes sense. So, and it's nice to say, like, like what you were saying, I think is really smart, is it's not about having 20 different baits and 20 rods on the deck. It's having 6 sometimes that you can catch one on a square bill, a frog, a jig, a buzz bait, just as good as any other bait. I'm just going to keep those locked in my hand, because if I catch a bass, that's what it's coming on. Mm-hmm. That's really smart.
And it's keeping you versatile in your strengths.
Yeah.
Don't go outside the box.
Yeah.
Your strengths are those 6 baits, and then just put them in rotation.
So a question too, kind of spun off that, is like, when you have been in a rut on the water, like say, for example, like you talked about earlier, a couple of those tournaments you had where you went 2-3 hours without a bite. Is there anything that you like do normally that like helps you to kind of get out of that rut or get out of the rhythm? Do you just keep moving? Do you slow down? Do you have any kind of pattern to help you kind of get out of those daily ruts that you kind of run into where you have those lulls?
So whenever I get like that, the first thing that I do is go to exactly where I think is my best chance on the entire lake to get a bite. Any kind of bite. I'm not fishing for big ones no more. Like all that's out the window. I'm driving to exactly where I feel like I'm about to get a bite. And I mean, I don't care if I've got 2 hours left and it's 30 miles away. Like I'm just going to go there and fish for an hour and drive back. Like that's the way that I think about it. Just go and try to get something going and start to be productive and kind of get that flow state working again and kind of get back in the zone. So to me, that's the only thing that you can do, is just go anywhere. It doesn't matter if it's a Ned rig or shaky head, whatever. Just go get a bite, like at all costs. If it's a bridge pylon and a doohickey rig, whatever it takes, you have to go get a bite, because momentum is real and the flow state is real. And like whenever things start going your way and start materializing, you can do a lot of damage in a short period of time. Like I've caught a bunch of 20-pound bags in 3-hour tournaments. You know, like if I've got 8 hours and the first 4 didn't go my way, I've still got 4, you know, and I've done it in less, you know, so that's kind of how I feel all the time. And just, you know, get that momentum going and just do something to get a bite.
That's really good. Now, if obviously at this point you've practiced, you feel like you have a good area or maybe an area where you can get a bite. Have you ever pulled up to some of those areas and you didn't get a bite, and now it's like, again, you're thinking, do you just think of what is the next best area, or do you think of like, do you actually just sit down for a minute? Do you ever like look at maybe your mapping, your electronics, and try to figure out, okay, do you almost start over practicing at that point, or do you just, you know, a lot of times do you get a lot of something going from going to that one spot?
So usually I would say like 80% of the time, and I mean, we've practiced for 3 days before an Elite Series tournament, you know, so if you don't have one place where you can pull up and get a bite, usually, you know, you're in trouble. And now it's rare you have one place you can pull up and do super well in the tournament, but usually you have a place where you can pull up and get a bite. But it doesn't always work that way. Like definitely, but whenever I get to that point and I've ran my best stuff and I feel like I can't get a bite, I'm not going to run stuff the rest of the day that I felt like is worse than the stuff that I just ran and didn't work. So that's whenever I'm going to do exactly what you said. And I like to sit down and kind of figure out which baits I'm going to use the rest of the day and just take like 2 or 3 minutes and just retie like 4 rods. Like I retie my flipping rod, my frog rod, whatever it is I feel like I'm going to use the rest of the day. I'll just retie those, get everything fresh, and then go run new water. And I mean, I've done it with an hour left. I've done it with 7 hours left. Like I've gotten into my first starting spot and fished for 30 minutes before and be like, yep, this ain't right today, and just instantly started running new water because that was the best spot that I possibly had, you know, then run new water the entire tournament. So, I mean, you have to do that, and I feel like a lot of good comes from running new water because practice days is when you smash them, you know, like that's whenever you catch them. So, I mean, why not do it in a tournament? Run around and pull up to whatever looks good and fish a hunch and follow your gut. I mean, that's what I do.
Well, what a fun episode that was. If you guys have missed any of the Bass Juice podcasts, I'm going to leave a link right here for the playlist so that you can check out all of our episodes. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.